Welcome to the Innovative Pedagogy Podcast, where we inquire with the greatest minds in academia, where innovation, creativity, and authenticity meet the best teaching and learning practices for educators all over the world. Most importantly, hoping all those we come in touch with leave inspired and ready to change their world. Here's our host, Chris Garcia.
Welcome, everyone, to the Innovative Pedagogy Podcast. I'm Chris Garcia, and today I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Jihan Johnston-McGlotten. Jihan is a cultural connector, digital innovator, and advocate for inclusion in education and esports. She is a co-founder of BeatBotics, an edutainment initiative that brings awareness to tech careers in esports and game design through the lens of hip-hop culture. All right, I can already jive with a lot of that already. And with a background in education and human-computer interaction, she has dedicated her career to creating inclusive gaming spaces and bridging the gap, which I love that, between technology and underserved communities. Jihan, welcome to the Innovative Pedagogy Podcast. I'm so glad
Thank you for having me, Chris. Hey, guys.
But as you're saying, that bridge between it just really resonates with me because back in 2012, I had the opportunity of visiting an all-girl boarding school in Kenya, and it was in Nanyuki, Kenya, which is 4 hours north of Nairobi. But the name of the school is called Daraja, which means bridge. And I was like, okay.
Oh, I love that. That's a vibe.
So I just, first off, I just want to I love your initiatives. I love the work that you're doing. And just talk to us a little bit about, especially those that are listening that may not know you. What's your background? What's your history? And I'd love to hear just your story, really.
Yeah, I always start off when people ask me who I am. I'm just a mom. That's it. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I take care of my almost soon-to-be high school graduate son. But that's actually my journey. That's actually how I got here. I was a college student. I have a broadcast journalism degree. Radio was not popping at the moment. And I was like, what do I do next? And my mom was like, you should get into a career that, helps you have those days off with your son. And never forget, I went to Richard Wright Public Charter School and applied for a part-time radio job to teach students radio because I started out in radio. So a lot of people don't know, at 14 years old, I was working for a big syndicated radio station in the marketing and promotions team. But I also grew up in the entertainment industry. So since I have been walking, I've been learning about live event concert production. So that was my passion, to be the first female concert promoter like my uncles. But then I found education. And so I got hired. Shout out to Dr. Marco Clark. I got hired at Richard Wright Public Charter and was teaching 8th grade radio classes and 9th grade broadcast journalism classes. And then I was like, oh, I like this. I like being able to go into the schools and talk to students, but authentically be myself. And so I just kept going. I was like, okay, what type of degree can I get? And so that's when I went to Concordia University and earned my master's in educational leadership. But I started seeing the success and the growth I was having as just like this non-traditional, non-technical teacher, which eventually led me to wanting to understand the educational process. And so that within my maybe second year of teaching, I went straight into being an assistant principal and also assistant state testing coordinator. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, yeah. I'll never forget. And I was at an all-girls charter school in Atlanta, Georgia. And so that's when I was like, okay, I can truly create impact the way that I want to by implementing digital media, technology. But that's also where I learned about Minecraft and how Minecraft was being used in the classroom. And I always tell this story of, I had a student, I was her AP, but I was also used to be her special education coordinator. And she could not read, she couldn't write, but she could talk. And so she loved Nicki Minaj. And so I will always find a way to implement Nicki Minaj in all her learning lessons, whether it was her listening, me doing a Nicki Minaj voice in the way that I taught her the lessons, but something creative. But she loved gaming. And that's when Microsoft Education had came to our school, trained our educators on how to use Microsoft Education. Shout out to Chanel Brown. And that's when I was like, okay, I remember I had a Sega, I had a Super Nintendo, I had a Nintendo. I'll show my age. Duck Hunt. I had a Pac-Man machine, and my uncle had a Pac-Man machine in his frat house. So we'd always go over there and play. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is, if I were to infuse my bachelor's of arts in broadcast journalism and PR and my master's in education, this is really what I want to do. And so that's really where it led me. I eventually went to Microsoft Education and worked there for 2 years. And that's where I saw the magic happen. That's where I learned about AR. That's where I learned about AI. And this is back in 2017. In between there, nobody knows this, but I worked in private equity and venture capitalism at Emory
Wow.
University. I did that for 2 years, and
Yeah.
it opened my eyes about entrepreneurship and startups. And I was like, I'm always going to have a startup. Like, nobody's going to tell me, don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to have a startup. And so then that led me to, I had a few assistant principal jobs, but for me, I always call myself a hippie. I like to bounce around. I don't like to feel stagnant. Once I feel like my job is done at some place, I will continue on and go do something else of where I'm creating impact. And so when I got
Yeah.
to Microsoft Education, I was like, wait, this is real. Like, you can really travel all over the US, train educators on how to be virtual educators, but I could really learn the business and the importance of integrating educational technology tools to
Yeah.
teach students from a creative lens and pathway. And so that started becoming my love. Um, and then COVID happened, dun 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 dun, and everybody was like,
Yeah.
okay, what are we doing? And so I still had educators calling, and I was like, Jihan, I'm so glad you taught us how to be virtual educators 2 years before. Can you? So I was doing like little consulting gigs, and then I was sitting at the table with my son, and he was just like bored. It was like, okay, I've done my work, can't go outside. I'm gonna go upstairs and I'm gonna go on a game. And I was like, no, first let's talk. What do you want to do in life? Like, I'm that one. I'm very inquisitive.
Yeah.
And he was like, I want to build my own PC. I was like, okay, I don't know how to do that, but we're going to figure it out. I'm going to make sure it gets done. And then he was like, I eventually want to own my own business. And I was like, oh, yeah, we could do that. Because at that time, I had already started my LLC for my just personal consultancy, which was the Hip Hop EdTech Diva at that time. And
Right.
so I
Right.
was just like, let's do it. And so I started researching myself, right? Where I remember when I was at Microsoft, that's when esports was heavy. That's what the curriculum came out. I was then a Minecraft certified educator. So I was teaching Minecraft. And I was like, okay, I know I can make this work, don't know how, but let me sit down and we figure everything out. So me and my son both love hip hop. He's, of course, modern day hip hop, and I'm
Yeah.
old hip hop. But we just like music. We like tech. Everything in our house is technology driven. And so that's how we came up with BeatBotics, understanding the beats and the elements of hip hop, and then the botics is the technical part, and then
Yeah.
infusing the hip musical technology and education together. So I was like, I love this, but I need more. I need more. This isn't good enough. And so I then researched for myself and was like, I already knew at that time that the numbers for minority women in technology have not grown since the 90s, and it was still technically at 2%.
Right.
And I
Right.
learned that in a tech accelerator. And I was just like, how the heck do I increase that? And so I was like, I got to pick up another trade. Like, I don't know what's going on in COVID. And so I started teaching myself UX research and UX design. And I absolutely loved it. I was like, I could do this. I could sit at home, create artistry all day, market myself off as a freelancer and consultant. I'll be good. And then it was always a lifelong dream to be a PhD, a Dr. Jihan Johnston. I
Yeah.
was raised by one. My grandfather was a psychiatrist, graduated from Harvard. So I had those models in front of me, but nobody in my family ever pursued the dream like my grandfather. So I was like, I always want to do that. So I was like, shoot, I have nothing to do. And in my friend group, I'm considered the Lynn from Girlfriends. So Lynn was the hippie. She always had educational degrees and opportunities, but she flowed through life the way that she wanted to. And so
Yeah.
I was like, at that time, that's when a lot of things were happening in the Black community, and we had to, everything was opening up from a opportunity perspective, and I took advantage, and I applied to all of the top PhD programs I had researched that were focused on design from an informatics standpoint. And so
Yeah.
I applied to University of Washington. I applied to Carnegie Mellon. And on my Carnegie Mellon interest call, I learned about UCI. And I was like, oh man, this would be a great way to get me back to California because I was partially raised in LA in the
Yeah.
Valley. And I was like, this would be perfect to raise a kid fresh out of COVID in a place of which I truly call home for myself. And
Yeah.
so I got accepted into UCI.
Wow.
Super, super excited, first try. And it was a beautiful experience. And I had to take a break due to some family things, but going back and I'm finishing because it's a lifelong goal. But that's where I learned about the world of gaming, the
Yeah.
true history of
Yeah.
gaming from a research perspective.
Right.
And then I got NASIF as my GSR, which is a graduate student research position. And so I was there for 2 years, conducted amazing research with the amazing team over at NASIF, but also was able to leave a footprint and help build culture in a worldwide organization. And so now I am enjoying my own journey, stepping out on faith and becoming a consultant through Jihan J Collective, which is my consultancy agency of one-on-one consultant and strategic work, but then also really blossoming BeatBotics into a level where it's a global agency and, sitting back, rebranding and understanding the importance of where technology and education is moving to. A lot of people don't know, like, I love AI,
Right. Right.
love it down. And so that's actually where I'm moving to. I'm moving to the space of implementing and understanding how AI education and gaming and esports collide, and are able to help build more global communities. And so my really hard work and passion is coming to life. And so I was actually looking at a timeline with my COO the other day, and I was like, dang, we really did it. Like from 2021 to 2024, like the work, the impact that we helped put
Yeah.
into motion was really done. So I was like, I can't wait for what's next. And so I'm just at home being a geek, you know, consulting myself out. I'm actually
Yeah.
building an app. I set out to go and get a few certifications because I just really think it's important for women of color to understand their truth and their stride right now in society. But
Right.
then
Right.
also, we have to understand where technology sits at and how it's going to not um, hinder our kids, but actually excel our kids if we use it
Right.
and implement it in the right structure. So that's a little bit about me.
Man, that
I,
is no, that's impressive. I'm very encouraged and I'm extremely stoked. I have one looming question because one, you're in
yeah.
Atlanta. I'm a big Marvel fan, but I also
Hmm.
love hip hop. I love technology, and I kid you not, other than Iron Man, my favorite like movie has to be Black Panther and then Wakanda Forever. Only
Yeah.
because the first movie, you have Kendrick Lamar, you got Chadwick Boseman, and then you got Shuri.
Everybody.
I don't know. So like I just wanted to grab your take really quick. Like what is it like living in Atlanta knowing that you're in the mecca of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but then also like movies like Black Panther?
You want to know something? I should never say this, but I've never seen like all of Black Panther. I've only seen clips. I'm not a movie girl. However, I've been to where they've taped it. It's across the street from Cam Newton's new sports bar. It's now made into condos, but living in a city that has the Georgia entertainment sector here is strong.
Yeah.
One of the things that I absolutely love is that you have access, whether it's driving down the street and you're Googling the yellow signs with the abbreviations on to figure out what's filming on the next street over, or maybe even in my neighborhood. Like
Yeah.
where I live at right now, they just built the new Lionsgate studio.
Very
And
cool.
so that I was picking my son up from school and they're like, you can't go this way. I was like, why? They're like, Tyler Perry's taping, and so the whole street is shut down. I was like, okay, thank you. But it opens people's eyes to understanding what is possible and what you can do
Yeah.
right here in a city that is actually supportive of all the arts, and not just film, but I absolutely love the film scene here. I love it. It's so many things being built or taped here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at it also like so you have One thing I really love about your perspective and even your background is you got that East Coast and you have that West Coast perspective on different things. A
Yeah.
question that I've been wondering a lot, and this is more for our West Coast, and because of the work you've even done over here, is have you seen a divide between the growth of esports between both coasts, between East Coast and West Coast? And if so, well, first off, have you seen a divide between the two as far as the growth of the programs?
I will say that I love how California is united from a CIF perspective of how
Mhm.
it up the coast, the kids can actually compete. It's spotty here. I will say Georgia does a great job as well from having that competition, but it's still new everywhere. That's one of the
Okay.
things that I actually had this conversation. I've been struggling. Like, do I stay? Do I go? Like, do I hop over to another industry? I'm like, no, I was told, no, you just need to find your niche in this one because a lot of people don't know. I don't do the competitive thing. My biggest thing is bringing that awareness, but also showing people the importance of how to infuse it, whether it's in everyday life, teaching the career pathways, but really grasping where and understanding where students are. I always this it's not where we sit at anymore. Like we sit in this digital world, and I always use the comparison of in my workshop that I do. It's called the Jetsons versus the Flintstones, and it's an introduction workshop to parents, teaching them the importance of gaming and esports and where we sit at, and
Yeah.
explaining to them how we grew up in the Flintstone era. Everything was traditional. Everything was, you got to do it by the books, and then now we're living in the era of the Jetson where it's just like, all I need is a computer. All I
Yeah.
need is a mount, and I'm good. I actually had this conversation with my son last night. I was like, I don't want you to feel like I'm pushing you that you have to go to college, but because he's finishing up his junior year, I'm like, but what do you want to do? What do you want to do in these next stages of your life? Because technically, boy, you got a year left. Like,
Yeah.
let's get
Yeah.
it together. And he was like, I really want to be a streamer and a content creator, but I don't know if I can handle both in college. I was like, I think that's a great opportunity to juggle both. Record
Mhm.
your day as a child in college. It's your first experience away from home. I was like, but always remember the importance of the focal and the foundation of having some type of degree to fall back on. Whether
Yeah.
it's a degree or a certification, it's important. And so I just say that when it comes to the coast, and I know I got off track, but when it comes to the coast and
Yeah.
where I see the advancement, I just really love how CIF has the entire state. You may have different states doing different things. You still have some schools that are, not even allowing esports, but I'm loving the conversational pieces that are going around it.
Right. Right.
Um, and actually, some schools are trying, but on the East Coast, it just depends, man. It depends. Like there are
Yeah.
still some like I don't know how active New York has it, but New York is a big school district and they have the gaming initiative, but theirs is through the mayor's department of the entertainment
Oh wow.
entertainment office. So it
Yeah.
sits in different various
Yeah.
spaces. And so I'm just glad that the conversations are happening versus not being happened because when I learned about esports, it was the craziest setup. And I always talk about it of how the private school where all the private schools were competing in a GHSA, which is their state league here, but none of the inner city schools had access, but they shared a bus parking lot. It was the craziest thing ever.
Yeah.
And now these schools into this is back in 2018, 2019. Now, and this shows you a timeline of just how far behind some schools are because of the lack of access. And that's why I work so hard to just basically do the awareness of the importance of implementing this, doing it the right way, but also using creativity to bring, educational foundation within the classroom.
No, I love that, and I could see what the whole idea of even having like the statewide athletics overseeing it, kind of what we have here with the California Interscholastic Federation. When it comes to talking to parents and the role that I have here with the county office in San Diego, and talking to parents, talking to schools, administrators, You mentioned CIF, especially when it's a school that's interested in esports. And specifically if it's like a small charter school that doesn't have much to offer sometimes to the students, but you mentioned CIF and they're like, wait, we could do that. I'm like,
Right.
and I looked at that breaks the conversation, that opens doors, and that's kind of like it's like kind of going back to even what you were talking about with your son having that college, that degree. It's something to fall back on. Talking to someone else actually that's part of our Alvaro Brito. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
man, I love his girl. Oh, he went from Compton to LA. Oh man, I love it. Love it.
well,
I am a big
he's currently
supporter of that.
he's pursuing his doctorate at Boise State. But one of the things he was
Yeah,
telling me was pursuing a doctorate opens doors.
it
And, and
does.
and I've heard the same phrase with getting a college degree. It opens doors, and not necessarily to maybe. I mean, and it's just one of those things. Like it's something to fall back on, but it opens doors. But I also feel with esports being under CIF, it's opened doors to more schools, and it
Hmm.
also brings that effective filter towards parents and teachers and board members. Are like, wait, I don't know, I don't want my kid playing Call of Duty. But then when they see that CIF backs it up, there's kind of like that blanket, that covering, like, oh, okay, then it's been vetted and there's a process for this.
Absolutely. I really think CIF is one of the key words because it really shows that, people are taking it serious. It's really teaching kids the hard and soft skills that we need to teach them, but it's also preparing them for that next step. One of the biggest things is understanding how K through 12 education is then going to partner and merge with help building that pipeline of professional or corporate spaces or collegiate so that kids understand how it's a seamless flow if done right. So I absolutely love it. I love how some here in Atlanta, particularly, they're in Atlanta public schools, they start them out in elementary,
Mhm.
elementary, middle, high. Every high school in the city of Atlanta has an esports lab, but they are teaching like computing in the elementary. The elementary kids have an esports tournament in the gyms of the high school. Like it's serious here. And then the athletic director is making all his football coaches, all his traditional sporting coaches take esports classes to understand how you put it in the traditional sporting framework. So that's the importance of esports. Yes, it's competition, but it's also about the back end. What type of community is being built? What type of safe spaces? What type of mindsets are being changed
Yeah.
when they're in these classrooms and these clubs? And that's some of the stuff that we talked about in our research with NASIP of how leveraging esports to change the mindset to stop the thought process of domestic terroristic thought behavior.
Right.
And how do we stop, you know, aligning ourselves with, okay, because I'm from this part of the neighborhood, I'm better. But no, when we all come together, we are literally all the same. Like color,
Right.
creed, race has nothing to do with it. We're here to game, but we're really here to help build that safe space and build everybody up.
I love that. And that's a nice segue to the next thing I was thinking about and I wanted to get your take on, and that is getting women involved. And I kind of talked about it
Yes.
in the beginning, but specifically getting women involved, getting girls involved. Um, I will tell you, I have a cousin that actually was working for GameStop. She got her communications degree at UCSD. However, we actually went to school at the same time. I went to UC Davis. She went to UCSD. She started as a computer science major. And
Hmm.
her take was, and she loves video gaming. She grew up video gaming her entire life. She wanted to develop video games at the time. Computer science was like the closest you could do it, like in 2008, to get a
Hmm.
degree, like but she said that she changed her major, and she actually shared with me last summer when she was a guest speaker for one of our sport camps here. She said that she decided to change her major because she could not stand the stench in the classrooms with all the boys. She said she was like one of the few girls that were in there, and she couldn't take anymore. So she basically changed her major to be communications, and she regrets it. She
Wow.
says she regrets that. She says I should have
Oh,
just sucked it up and just dealt with the stench, got my computer science degree. But again, I that could be one solution when it comes to the
right,
hygiene of the boys. But
right.
what else? What else do you think plays a factor in this?
I think it's how, you know, girls want to feel safe. They want to feel protected. A lot of times in the gaming world, it's the very opposite, But then also, it's the respect. A lot of people, started out as a male dominated industry. So we have to continuously do the work so that women see the spaces, because there have been some incidents in the past that have created horrible, situations for women within corporate spaces, within collegiate spaces. And so I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of organizations, you'll see us here at Ghost Gaming, having the Lioness Girl Gamer Festival and the Ghost Girl campaign, because women, we stick together. And,
Yeah.
one of the things that, is through gaming. And so I will honestly say the beautiful community of women that I come from within the women's and esports community is very strong, it's very passionate, it's very supportive. And I think we have to show young girls um, the model of what it looks like to have strong, dominant women within this industry support you all at an early age. But it's also the language, like gameplay. Some of the games the girls don't want to play. There's different, fields that, attract young girls. And
Yeah.
so if I see a woman that, looks like me, or has a background, or, maybe even have one of the type of gear that I like, I'm going to be attracted to that and be able to strike up a conversation. And so when I'm looking at some of these girl festivals and these girl gaming clubs, I actually just got off the phone with one. They're just like, we want to teach young girls through coding how to do game developing. How can I help? Because
Mhm.
we need more young girls in these spaces. We need more young girls talking about it, and not being afraid that if I'm gaming, then something's wrong with me. It's all about the language and the feels that the young ladies get when they're in these spaces that make them want to keep going and make them wanting to be a part of male dominated teams. I can honestly say my experience, because I've only been doing this for about 6 years, my experience in this industry has been amazing because I've only allowed certain people within my boundaries. Have I been disrespected, or, maybe not respected because I am a female and I'm a Black female? Absolutely. But you then still have that strong support system of those that support who you are and the message that you bring.
I love that. That's so powerful right there. And I think being able to start teaching our boys right now how to create a safe space, um, I think that right now comes with a lot of. I'm looking at it twofold as far as coaches modeling it,
Hmm.
but also being consistent. And that's the one thing I'm noticing. And that's the sad thing is a lot of the coaches, there's a lot of turnover sometimes. And I think it's important for coaches to understand that it's um it's the Wild West right now, as you could probably think about it with esports, with the way it's growing. It's very
Yeah.
fluid. So it's almost like, and you understand this with the special ed background, it's almost like every single school site, every district has their own esports IEP because they're all functioning with specific things that they have to work with.
They are.
I think
The conversation still goes on funding, or,
yes.
is it approved in a district? Can I get the equipment on time? What type of gameplay are we limited to? I was actually told that they wanted to see more educational purposes behind gaming versus the actual gameplay. And I'm like, well, the educational stuff comes, but some teachers get lost in the gameplay. So I think it's the educational value. And then speaking of special education, I talk about how esports can be the most inclusive community because there's no type of boundaries that are put into place. And which I love being, community impact manager for Ghost. I work with the Nerve community, and that's working with the paraplegic esports team, so that they have some type of safe community, but also see representation like themselves within this space. And then the conversation is, how do we blend traditional esports with inclusive esports so that
Mm,
it is a community of all and not separate, and not inclusive communities feeling like some people are just doing it for a photo op. But how do we really bring these esports teams and communities together to truly unite as one?
that's beautiful. And it's very timely you said that as well, because I mean yesterday, um Microsoft released the adaptive joystick.
Accessibility adapters,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm like, they
Yeah.
already have the one that has the two clickers on there, but
Yeah.
to see the other one with the joystick, I was just like, this is cool. This is opening doors for especially a lot of our students that need accessibility. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, you just brought it up though. Like you're creating this space, the talent level and the ability to like see games happen with students just when they're competing, like that's what's respected. And one of the things I noticed, and I've talked to my director about this, is when I've held middle school, high school tournaments, I have schools coming in, and I'm pretty sure you've seen in tournaments, there's schools that come in with this arrogance or like, hey, we're gonna win this whole thing and
Right.
whatnot. And unfortunately I've noticed that
It's
those
the
schools,
underdogs.
right, those are schools that end up getting they're out the first round unless they're
Yeah,
lucky enough to be in the
the
double.
underdogs are the ones that a lot of people sleep on.
Yes.
Whether it's from the Black and Brown community, the inclusive women's, the younger kids versus the older kids.
Right, right.
I always tell school districts, you guys still have so much gripe when it comes to, the integration of gaming. Why don't y'all have a educator versus students game battle and really see who will win? Really put the challenge to the team. And you will see that these younger kids will beat the crap out of these educators, but
Yes, they
also
will.
show them the skill set that is needed to win. It's all about a skill set. And I just think it should happen. Every district should have a teacher versus student esports team to where they are really understanding the vision of what students are put the time, the energy, the learning, the skill sets that are being developed versus, okay, let's pull out your books, let's pull out your laptops. That's what we consider technology. So it's all about integration of innovation.
I love it. I love it. And I definitely want to continue to elaborate on that. And I want to just kind of leave you with just some final thoughts when it comes to innovation, when it comes to what is your message to district administrators, to teachers, to even board members that have a resistance still and they're thinking, okay, how can I why should I incorporate esports? What can I do? Like what would be your message if you had to talk to us, present in front of a school board tonight and give them a 3 minute pitch? What would it be?
All right, so we'll first start off with a open discussion of them sitting in and understanding, where we sit at. So I always I'm going back to my Jetson and Flintstone because this is my example. Um, Raise your hand if you, and this is an activity that I do. Raise your hand if you used to go to a roller skating rink, a corner store, or your cousin's house to go play video games. And the room lights up. All right, tell me your favorite game. You'll hear Zelda, Pac-Man, Sega, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, NBA Jam, Def Jam Vendetta. You'll hear all of this. And I'm like, what are some things that you guys enjoyed the most about it? The connection, the collaboration, the competition. I'm like, okay, let's go fast forward. How many of you all started when internet started? How many of you all remember, when the gaming industry changed it? Let's go ahead and move on up to the Flintstone era. Let's understand that our kids are doing the exact same things that you all just got excited about in this room. They're getting collaboration. They're getting, they're learning different languages. They're understanding different cultures, but they're learning. They're programming when you guys don't even understand the program, but they are building community. The only difference is we unfortunately grew up in the era where internet was just starting. So
Right.
we had to go ask our parents for our 25 cents or our dollars, schedule time with our friends to meet up and go play. That was weekend, it was structured. I said the only thing that our kids are doing is that they get the luxury of sitting in their rooms and playing their games. But they're still asking you for money. They're still collaborating with their friends. They're still learning culture. If anything, they're learning more things than we did, and we just had the basic necessities. So we can't be so hard on our students. That's just like us as an ever for changing role of educators, is that, you know, there's somebody that may have taught us the traditional way, but we found ways to move forward and be innovative and not to derive to those traditional formats. So that's the same way that we have to allow our kids. Remember that we aren't the leaders of this society. We're just the facilitators. We are preparing our students for what's next. And so we, even though some of us may be timid, we have to be okay to take the back seat and allow some of our students to drive as they are entering into industries and fields that we have never touched and will never touch. And so that's my message for educators.
Man, Jihan, talk about a mic drop. But thank you so much again for just
Absolutely, all the time.
sharing your story. I'm inspired by your work. I'm stoked. I hope we continue to collaborate. Hope
Absolutely.
we get to meet in person. Next year maybe I'll make my way to the Esports Summit.
Now, let me know some in San Diego. When I'm in California, I'll just
Yeah,
drive down. Yeah, just let me know some in advance, and I'll make sure that I come out and support.
absolutely. I would love that. We just
Yeah.
hosted a Minecraft tournament this past weekend, but we're gonna do it again around this time next year. So I'll give you the
Okay.
dates for that once I have that. So that way you have plenty of time to plan that out.
Absolutely.
So
However I can support.
absolutely. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in today. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future topics or like to get involved with the podcast, actually visit garciaedtech.com. All my contact information is on there, and also links to the episodes. And you can download and listen to this episode on all platforms, from Spotify to Apple to YouTube, Pandora, iHeartRadio, whatever the case is. Jihan, thank you once again for
Absolutely. Absolutely. Always.